Okay, so my name is Katie Philpott. I am the matron for Maternity, and we did an A3 around our maternity inpatient service. So the reason we chose to do an A3 was because we didn't really know what we were doing with our project. We knew we'd got a problem in maternity, but we didn't really know where to start. And I think for us, the A3 allowed us to just really break that down and think about each of those sections really specifically. And we also set part of our huddle board up as an A3. So when we did our weekly huddles, we would go through our A3 and think about how we were in and where we were in that journey. So for those of you that haven't looked at kind of maternity work, maternity is under huge amounts of national scrutiny currently. We had lots and lots of national reports, so we had Ockenden, we had East Kent, we were rating Nottingham, and essentially what we know is there are real problems within maternity services, and what we really needed to look at was what was the problem within Dudley and what was it we could do about it. We know that one of our biggest problems is we're quite a small unit for the number of women that we look after. So as a comparable, our closest trusted number of deliveries has around about 12 more beds than we do. So we knew that our processes needed to be really efficient, and we needed to make sure that we streamlined the care that we gave so that we could give the best care to our women. So within maternity we use escalation levels, and escalation level 4 essentially means we are closed. So escalation level 3 is where we can divert to local regional units. Escalation level 4 means that there is no capacity within the region to help us, and that we just have to absorb that into our service. So that causes us lots of problems. It causes us problems for our patients. It makes our care less safe than we want it to be. It really causes problems with our staff morale. It's really challenging, it's really difficult. They're looking after higher ratios than they should be. And it just makes everybody feel like it just is, there isn't an end to it. So last year we particularly met quite challenging escalation levels, and you can see my overall metric. So our aim for the project was that by September 2023, we reduced the number of times that the maternity unit was closed due to staffing and capacity by 50% in comparison to the same 6 months in the previous financial year. The reason we chose the same 6 months for the previous financial year was because maternity has definite peaks. So we know that August, September is really busy, it's a bit Christmas babies. And actually what we didn't want to do was falsely reassure ourselves that actually it's really bad in September and October, but if we look at January, February, it's fine. So, oh, we've achieved it, well done everybody, but actually we're comparing apples and pears. So we were really conscious that we needed it to be the same 6 months. And what we looked at were key areas of focus, so maternity triage, the elective section and discharge pathway, and induction of labour. We looked at what was in scope and out of scope. So we have around about 35% of our women deliver with us who are actually booked out, who live elsewhere, so they live outside of our catchment area, but they choose to come and have their babies at Russell Hall. And actually, because this was inpatient focused, every woman booked with us came into scope. But out of scope was anything that didn't fit perfectly within inpatient. So day assessment unit was one that was particularly difficult because they have such a crossover with our inpatient areas, but actually we felt like we needed to get it right in one area first and then we could replicate that work throughout. So the first of our metrics that we collected was the number of hours per month that we were at level 4, and you can see that on that graph there. So moving on to our balance metrics, we didn't really know what we wanted to collect because we didn't really know what our problem was. Which is where the A3 really helped us, because actually what we've got on the left hand side of this metric box is a list of everything that Chris really helpfully collected for me in that first kind of bit for our event. And actually what we found as we went through the event was the problems that we thought were there weren't, and actually the data that we needed was really different. So it's kind of just be flexible and don't necessarily set yourself, well, this is what I need to collect, and don't think about anything else, because we very much changed our mind on what we collected through the time that we did it. So just to pick a couple of them, so our quality was around our safety and our delivery times. So we looked at how quickly women are admitted and their induction starts. We looked at the percentage number of women who were triaged within 15 minutes. We know that we had one of the worst staff surveys in the whole of the trust, not last year, the year before. So our morale was all based around our staff survey and our staff engagement, and cost was around, were we using our money wisely? So were we using the public purse properly, and actually was there a cheaper and better way of doing things that could save us some money? and actually didn't save us some money because I just used it all somewhere else. So what we did first was we looked at our current state. So you can see on my A3, this is one of our current state maps, and we set ourselves 4 different maps for each of our areas of focus. And actually, really interestingly, the one that we thought would be the smallest, which was our elective section map, had about 300 post-its on it. So we really identified problems within the elective section pathway that we just had no idea that existed. So it was a really interesting kind of way of looking at our current state. And I think one thing that we've learned as a maternity department, and I know the deputy matrons and Claire and all of the other leads within the area, if we don't know the answer now, we map it. So if we don't know what the problem is now, my office is full of bits of brown paper and post-it notes, and we will frequently stick them up on a wall and go, right, let's get some people in the room and let's map it, because I don't actually know what the problem is. So I think for me, one of the biggest things that I've learned is mapping and actually how that identifies the problems. So then we moved on to our current state, and we thought about what is it we wanted to do. So we came up with some aim statements for each of our areas, and to allow us to do it, we used some problem solving and analysis. So on the original one that Catherine showed you, there was a fishbone, and we couldn't really make the fishbone work for maternity because it was just too big a area of diversity. So like what works in triage isn't the same as induction, and what works in induction is different to elective and recovery, and so we kind of really struggled to get a fishbone, and we sat for ages trying to move our post-its around, and we just couldn't quite get it right. And then Nick said, oh, have you ever done a driver diagram? Nope. Gave me this really fancy spreadsheet that creates this. So just to kind of pick a few out really, it just allowed us to really break it down. So we knew that what we needed to do was reduce the number of hours closed, but how do you do that? Well, actually we need to be timely and efficient. Okay, so how do you be timely and efficient? So we need to be more accessible to our postnatal education, because actually what happened at the time was we had a bay of 4 women, and the midwife would go round and speak to each of those 4 women for 20 minutes about her postnatal education. Well, that's an hour and 20 minutes of her day that's gone. And it's also, for the last lady, an hour and a half longer in a bed than she needed to be. So we changed the way we did patient education, and we've got little group sessions. So they run in our family room, so someone will come and deliver a group session. And we've also got quite a lot of accessible information that's on our internet. So we've set up some education padlets. They're on a QR code that are at every bed space, so the women can have a look. It will relate them to all of the national websites, so where we need to give safe sleep information, we know that will go to the correct website, and it just really kind of reduced that time that they spent doing that work. And also what we did was kind of looked at, midwives are a small finite resource. We don't have hundreds of midwives, we couldn't recruit midwives, our vacancy was around about 35 whole-time equivalent midwives, it was massive. So actually, who else could do this? Actually, what could we do? So we followed a midwife round for 24 hours with a bit of paper and a pen and a highlighter. And we went through it and said, right, what is it you do in your job that somebody else can do? So what we did from that was we created a totally new role. We've got Band 3 support workers now that deliver most of our parent education. They do quite a lot of our observations for our mums and babies. And what that's done is it allowed us to release a whole midwife back to delivery suite. So we know that midwives need to give intrapartum care, no one else can do that. And it gave us one whole midwife back every single shift. That meant that we've got somebody else that could have one-to-one care in labour. So that was how we used our driver diagram. We then went on to create aim statements for each of our areas. And again, the reason we did this was because we felt our overall aim statement was too broad, and the A3 allowed us to break it down much more simply. So we came up with aim statements for each of our areas, and we identified groups of staff that worked within those areas who were really going to run these projects. So this is the kind of the part where I went, over to you guys to carry on. And actually we gave each of those groups within that area the aim statement. They'd done their maps, they knew what they wanted to achieve, and they were the ones that came up with all of the ideas. So we then wrote our action lists, and we had, I've put a snippet of them on here for you, but we had over 200 actions within our action lists from our event. They break down into each of the areas, and as at current time, so our event was just over 12 months ago, and currently we only have 3 of our actions out of, I think it's 190 that aren't complete. So an incredible amount of work, and some of those are around estates work and finance and bits that are just a little bit more tricky. So the action lists are all up on the boards. They are in a Teams file that everybody has access to, so people can go on and update them themselves. They can look at what's outstanding, people are all assigned to them. So it just gave us that ability to kind of hand that responsibility over, and we would just kind of check in at 30, 60, 90 days and go, where are we at, where are our actions, and what have we still got to do. So we obviously came across some problems, and I've made it sound like it was all really easy, but it wasn't really easy at all. And we came across some problems, again, that we didn't know existed. So one of our real key ones was our elective section pathway. So we do 3 elective sections, 5 days a week, and on average we were cancelling about 2 to 3 per week, because we couldn't finish the list, because there weren't staff available, because the list overran, various different reasons. And we really broke that down into what is it that causes us to overrun? Is it that the list is too complex? Is it that we start late? Is it that we have big gaps in the middle? What is it that causes that? And one of our biggest things that we found was when, depending on who ran our list as to how quickly we started, therefore what time we finished. And actually we realised that our obstetricians had different start times to our theatre teams, who had different start times to our anaesthetists, and registrars had different start times to consultants, and it was just bonkers. We went, well actually we're aiming for knife to skin at 9 o'clock, but if you don't start till 8:45, well that's completely unachievable. So kind of our biggest escalation really was around that standardisation of times, and we went to the main theatres and said, what do you do in theatre? And they said, oh, this is our plan. It's literally on a piece of paper, you start at this time, you brief at this time, the first patient comes to the anaesthetic team this time, and we went, why don't we do that? No, all maternity theatres are different though, aren't they? But why are they? Because it's still a patient coming to theatre and having an anaesthetic, and so that was what we did. So that was one of our kind of biggest challenges, was really working on that alignment of start times. It needed job planning, it was a huge piece of work, but we have got there. So really, really pleased with that. Thinking about the roles and responsibilities was another one, and again that kind of was a little bit against the grain, and we sort of said, well, we want our support workers to do something differently, and everyone went, oh. Said, not only do we want our support workers to do something differently, we'd really like some nurses, please. So, you maternity, why do you want nurses? Well, actually, because these are post-op patients, a nurse can help us look after a post-op patient. These are patients in recovery, we can use a nurse in recovery, the same as you would do. And that was kind of our biggest challenge back from our staff. We went to the staff with this idea, and they all went, well, that doesn't work, does it? Well, we can't do that, can we? Because it's a baby, it's different. So we created a job list, and we went out for an expression of interest, and we got 4 incredible nurses that worked with us for 12 months. And we've, touch wood, now not only got no vacancy, we're over-recruited. Actually, we don't need our nurses anymore. They've all gone back to where they worked. 2 of them are going to come and do their midwifery training, which is incredible. But the staff that all went, well, what do we want nurses for? Are now going, don't take the nurses away from us. Our nurses are brilliant. So actually, it's been a really interesting shift in people's mindset. We did some kind of external escalation. So for those of you that know the work with PEDS, they use the virtual ward. So one of our work streams where our patient satisfaction was really poor was induction of labour. So induction of labour, women were waiting long periods of time, they were away from their families, they were away from their other children. And as part of that kind of really blue sky thinking, we talked about where do these women want to be, and we drew a bit of a picture, and they had a comfy bed, and they had the food they wanted, and they had a telly, and it was all lovely, and we went, that's their house. So should we just leave them at home? And all of our obstetricians went, well, you can't do that. We're not monitoring them, we don't know what's happening, what if there's a problem? So how do PEDS do it? So we went and looked at PEDS, and we went through what they did. We met with Docabo, and within about 2 weeks they'd created me a maternity virtual ward. So our induction of labours come in, they start their process, they go home, they stay at home 24 hours, and then they come back into us. So it gives much better patient satisfaction, the women love it, but it also takes the strain off the staffing and off the workload, because actually, if you're looking after 10 inductions, actually but 2 of them are at home, that takes away sort of 20% of your workload immediately. So it has had a really great benefit, and that's kind of just thinking about going outside of trust and thinking what we can do. So I could talk about this all day, so I'll talk to you a bit about our post-improvement data. So here are our aim statements and our data for all of our areas. So delivery, so our delivery metric was induction of labour, admission to commencing induction. This is a national standard, so this is set by NICE and it's a 2-hour standard. Anything over than 2 hours is reported as a red flag for staffing, so that's one of the things that we were really keen on looking at. Pre-improvement, we were at 7 hours 20, and post-improvement we are at 1 hour 50. So you can see from our previous graph, it's really higgledy-piggledy. Sometimes it was an hour, sometimes it was 12 hours. It was really hit and miss. We have no consistency, whereas you can see from our post-improvement data that we've got really good consistency within our process now. Quality, so this was around our safety, so this is a little bit like what ED talked about earlier, and this is percentage of women triaged within 15 minutes. Pre-improvement, that was 68%, and there is a national target of 90%. We're currently sitting at 96%, and actually last month it was 99.2%. So we're really actually doing great things with our triage work. And we know that that was one of the things that was going to come from CQC. So we knew pre-CQC coming to us that one of their main areas of maternity focus was maternity triage. So we got it ready, we were ready, we'd got all our data, we were ready to talk about it, we talked about it, and actually it's one of the things that they've really commented on within our report of good is actually how we've managed that and how we've sustained that improvement. So really, really pleased with that. Cost-wise, outpatient induction, we've got an approximate cost saving of £1,290 per week, and that's around bed stay cost, drug costs, monitoring cost, time. So huge savings. Like I say, they're not really savings because I've definitely spent them elsewhere. And then our morale, so we had one of the best improvements within our staff survey last year within the maternity department. So we had huge improvements around people feeling engaged and wanting to come and do things. And I think one of these had a 21% increase, so that's question 5. Team members often meet to discuss the team's effectiveness. So we huddle every single week. So for us that was a hugely beneficial change in our staff survey. And then I've done our post overall, so this was my original metric, and as you can see we've had huge improvements from VSA to implementation. So October 2022 was when we did our event. Since then we have closed 3 times at escalation level 4, never for more than 13 hours. And actually through the summer of July, August, September, all of our regional units were at escalation level 4 for most of that time, and we hit it once for 6 hours. We talked about actually, are we just quieter? Are we delivering less babies? Like, is there something different? Are we counting it differently? Are we doing something differently? I've been in post for kind of 18 months to 2 years doing slightly different roles, but we count it exactly the same. We've had exactly the same number of births, in fact we've had more. It is just that the system works better now, and we're not getting to the point where we've got big delays. We're not getting backlogs in induction of labour, so they're not taking a bed. So actually we're getting women in on the day they're supposed to be in, they're seen and discharged really quickly, and actually it's just a hugely much more efficient service. So then thinking about our sustainment, so some of these post-its here talk about our sustainment, and it was kind of what did we do really post-event, because we were really aware that within that week and that first 90 days we had huge amounts of improvement, but what we didn't want to do was let that drop off once we started to not look at it. So we really celebrated our success. They get a little bit sick of my data, so about once a month they get a whole host of, do you know, this has changed and this is the impact it's made. But actually the staff really like that, because it does just give us that kind of, it is working and it is doing well. We did a watch launching board, which is one of the things that some of the other units have used when they've done some of their improvement work. Is I think to get that staff buy-in, it was why is it changing? What are we changing? When are we changing it? And why are we changing it? And I think that really helped us because people understood what we were doing, and every time we made a change, we made a poster, it went on the What's Launching board. It just gave people that opportunity to know what was happening, and we talked about it at all of our huddles. But it also meant things like people who've been off on maternity leave or long-term sick could come back and look in one place for what's changed, and that was really beneficial for us. And then I think probably our most beneficial thing, and probably the thing I am most proud of, is our quality system. So we do a quality control system now within maternity. The reason we started it was because we had really great improvements in our elective section pathway. We got our knife to skin from 9:54 in the morning to 8:56, I think it was. And then about 3 months later, I did a really quick snapshot and went, it's 9:30 again. What's happened? Why has that happened? Oh no, what have we done? Slipped, what have we done? So as always, went to the improvement team and went, help, what's happened? I don't know what to do. And actually what we've set up is a monthly meeting. It's led by myself, but very much the work is done by the deputy matrons and our ward managers. They collate all of the data for me for all of our work streams, and they come to me once a month and go, this is on track, this has slipped, this has improved, this is what we need to do. The report comes to me a week before, so it means that I can look at it and go, okay, so induction of labour is a problem this month and I don't know why. So what we do then is invite a couple of our band sixes, our support workers, our lead midwives, and go, talk to me about induction, talk to me about what it is, what's changing, what have we done differently this time. And good and bad. So like I said to Nick yesterday, like, oh, our triage data is amazing. He said, what have you done differently this week that you didn't do last week? It's like, actually, yeah, what is it? What is it that we've done differently? So I think for me, that's probably the thing that I am most proud of, is that we are now 12 months in and our data is maintaining. And we really have gone to a kind of culture of continuous improvement. Like I say, if we don't know the answer now, we map it, we do an A3. Katie yesterday, we talked about doing a new kata for one of our projects. We really have kind of gone into that methodology of use those tools and how do we do it. So I think I'm generally the spokesperson because these guys don't like talking, but actually I didn't do this work, the team did this work, and I think that's why it's been so successful, is because it didn't come from me. I know that I can stand there as the matron and say, I need you to do this, and they'll go, yeah, right, and then they carry on doing what they're doing. But actually some of our midwives have been so instrumental within these changes that actually that's why this has worked. So really just a huge thank you to everybody in maternity.
Thank you, Katie. Has anybody got any questions about anything that Katie's talked about?
I think I have a general question. I mean, it's amazing to hear all of this. It really, really is, and to hear some of the backstory. And the question is about the culture that you're creating in the department. Is that a shock to when new people join you, or do you think that quality methodologies are becoming more commonplace within training before people get here? Or?
No, so I think it's a real shock to people
Wow.
that join us, yeah, absolutely. We've had a new band six that's just joined us from quite a local trust, and we did some sort of introduction work with them last week, and we went and talked to them about improvement work, and kind of set that scene originally of, this is what we expect of you, we expect you to be part of this, these are the projects we're currently running, we expect you to be involved in them, and they were all really shocked. And I think the really interesting thing was they all went, oh, the matron's come to talk to us. And I was like, yeah, I sit on deliveries thing. And I think actually it has come as a real shock, and I think we don't shout about it enough really. And we've been to national conferences recently and we've watched people kind of present some of their improvement things and gone, ours is way better than that. I think you said they're loads better than that. And actually I think it is that we've been really cautious and we've waited, because what we didn't want to do was go, we've done this really great thing, and then September, October hit and we go, oh, it's gone really wrong. But yeah, I think people joining us have been really shocked by kind of how engaged it is and how much we listen and how much we change based on people's opinions and suggestions. So, yeah.